So let's unpack a story today that honestly, it really stopped us in our tracks. Imagine this. You protect your child, you do what you absolutely know is the right thing, the moral thing, and then bang, your whole world just gets turned upside down. You find your family completely cut off, isolated by your own community. Well, it's
Hmm.
unsettling, and we're
Yeah.
diving into the experience of one family in India where this is exactly what happened. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the really compelling story of Prasant Bar and his family. They live in Balia Pati, which is, a quiet village tucked away in Odisha's Balasore district. For 3 long years now, they've basically been living under the shadow, caught in a kind of storm of isolation, a storm with no rain, just hardship. Our mission today is to really get into their journey, understand what happened, explore the complexities, and maybe figure out why this one story actually tells us so much more.
Exactly. And what we'll find, I think, is that this isn't just, one family struggle, although it's definitely that and it's incredible. It really acts as a powerful lens, giving us a window into this sort of intricate web of challenges in rural India. We're talking about the persistent issue of child marriage, deeply rooted caste dynamics, and the often difficult fight for actual justice on the ground. As we peel back the layers, we're going to pull out some genuinely surprising facts, I think, and connect this specific, really gripping story to that much bigger picture. So, yeah, get ready for some aha moments because what unfolds here really shines a light on the challenges many communities are still, grappling with today.
Okay, so let's go back. Transport yourself to Balia Pati 2022. Try and picture it. A teenage girl, she's in class 9, probably just living her life, right? Thinking about school, maybe friends, dreams. And then, just like that, her world is violently interrupted. A man from a village nearby, Jambirai, does the unthinkable. He kidnaps her. It's every parent's nightmare suddenly becoming real. Now, initially, there's some relief. The police, thankfully, acted fast. They intervened, they rescued her, brought her home safe. You'd think, okay, huge collective sigh of relief, right? Crisis over, the family can start to heal. But that's not quite what happened next, was it? What was the immediate reaction after the rescue?
No, instead of healing,
Hmm.
something pretty shocking unfolded. The kidnapper's family,
Yeah.
get this, joined by some other villagers, actually started putting pressure on Prasant and his wife.
Yeah, right.
And their demand, it was just outrageous. They wanted Prasant to marry his daughter off to the very man who had just abducted her.
Wait, marry her to the kidnapper.
Yes. Marry her to the kidnapper. It defies logic. It defies basic decency. It feels like something from a completely different era, frankly. It just has no place in today's world.
Wow. And this is where Prasant and his wife, they showed just incredible courage. They stood firm. They didn't budge. They absolutely refused to sacrifice their daughter's future. She was still a minor. They chose her safety, her dignity, her right to, decide her own life, standing against what they knew were these just harmful, outdated traditions. That's a massive act of parental protection.
It truly is. But that courage, that standing firm, it came with an immediate and brutal consequence. The
Wow.
villagers, not all we assume, but a significant group, they acted together, almost like a punishment. They slapped a complete social boycott on Brasant's family, just like that. Overnight, their lives were completely upended. It became this harsh struggle just for basic existence, cut off from everything they knew.
That sounds absolutely devastating. A social boycott. If it's designed to break their spirit, what does that actually mean day to day for a family in rural India? It's more than just people not talking to you, right?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really key point.
Yeah.
It's far, far more severe than just being ignored or, being unfriended as we might think of it. In this context, a social boycott means you are actively barred from essential community resources.
Hmm.
Think about shared wells for water suddenly. No access.
No water.
No water from the community source. Collecting firewood for cooking, for warmth forbidden. Accessing local shops. The market for basic food and supplies. Nope, you're cut off. Even working in the agricultural fields, which is often their main or only source of income, barred from that too.
So their livelihood is gone.
Exactly. And it extends even further. They can't enter the village temple for prayer, can't participate in weddings, funerals, any social functions. It's a calculated, really oppressive form of isolation. It's designed, quite deliberately, to make life unbearable until they break and conform. It's about crushing their spirit through total deprivation.
And the really staggering part is that this has been going on for 3 years. Since 2022, Prasant's family has lived this nightmare, virtually invisible, cut off, just because they did the right thing, because they protected their child. It's genuinely hard to wrap your head around that level of community punishment still existing in 2025. It feels archaic.
It does. And this specific case, as harrowing as it is, really throws a spotlight on the the wider issue of child marriage across Odisha. The statistics themselves paint a pretty sobering picture. According to the latest National Family Health Survey, that's NFHS 5, around 1 in 5 women aged 2024 in Odisha, 20.5% to be exact, were married before they turned 18, the legal age.
Later in life.
Yeah, now that's a tiny improvement from the previous survey, NFHS 4, which is 21.3%, but still it shows the problem is deeply, deeply entrenched. And here's something really interesting, maybe counterintuitive. We often focus on girls, obviously, but the data shows early marriage among boys in Odisha is actually increasing.
Okay, boys getting married younger.
Yes. 13.3% of men aged 25-29 were married before they hit 21, which is the legal age for men. That's up from 11% in the previous survey. Kind of makes you wonder about the pressures on young men, too, doesn't it? Economic pressures, societal expectations. It's not just about traditions affecting girls.
That's a really important nuance.
It is. And other sources confirm the scale. The National Crime Records Bureau, the NCRB, they reported 46 cases under the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act in Odisha in 2022. And between 2020 and 2021, the state saw 64 child marriages officially stopped, which was actually the highest number in a decade. So maybe more reporting, but also still happening. Plus, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, the NCPCR, they flag over 11,000 children in Odisha just in 2023-24 as being vulnerable to child marriage.
11,000.
Yeah, often just because they were out of school for too long or dropped out.
That's a major red flag. Okay, but to be fair, Odisha's trying to tackle this, right? You mentioned progress earlier. I mean, they launched an action plan back in 2019. By 2022, something like 12,000 villages were declared child marriage-free. That's what's significant. Places like Ruguripali and Gunjam was even the first whole district to get that title. So there's definitely movement. Which brings us back to the core question. With all these efforts, this clear progress on paper, why do these really backwards traditions still seem to have such a stranglehold in places like Balia Pati? Why can Prasant's situation just carry on?
And that leads us inevitably to the really crucial and often, let's be honest, uncomfortable factor, caste. Prasant's family belongs to the scheduled caste, or SE community.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty clear that their boycott is deeply entangled with caste-based discrimination. This isn't unique, sadly. We've seen similar things. Remember that case in 2020 in Kandikateni village, Den Canal district?
Vaguely. What happened there?
40 Dalit families were boycotted. 40 families. Why? Because a 15-year-old girl picked some flowers from an upper caste man's garden. Flowers.
Just for picking flowers.
Just for picking flowers.
Yeah.
The Odisha Human Rights Commission actually had to step in, citing clear violations under the SCST Prevention of Atrocities Act. So what this pattern suggests in Balia Pati too is this underlying power imbalance. Certain communities feel they have the right to set the rules, to be the scriptwriters, you could say, for how others, especially lower castes, should live. Prasant's family. They basically tore up that script. They asserted their rights, their daughters' rights. And that clearly challenged the established hierarchy.
And the irony is, there are laws specifically designed to prevent this, to protect them. India's Prohibition of Child Marriage Act from 2006 is crystal clear. Marrying a girl under 18 or a boy under 21 is illegal, period. There are penalties up to 2 years in prison, a significant fine. The legal tools are there. And didn't the Supreme Court weigh in recently? October 2024, spurred by an activist from Odisha itself, Alaka Sahu, they laid out a whole action plan to end child marriage by 2030, giving states more power. So the laws are clear. The highest court has spoken. Why isn't this translating into protection for Prasant's family on the ground?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It highlights this incredibly frustrating gap. Laws are only as good as their enforcement, especially in rural areas. What happens is local village councils, the panchayats, or sometimes just self-appointed community leaders, they often act like kangaroo courts.
Kangaroo court.
Essentially, yeah. They operate outside the national legal system. They hand out punishments like social boycotts or fines as if the actual laws of the land just don't apply to them, which raises that critical question you hinted at. This boycott has lasted 3 years. Where are the local authorities? Where's the single police station and all this? They have a duty to uphold the law.
It's a total breakdown.
It really seems like it in this case. A stark reminder that laws on paper mean very little without strong, consistent enforcement on the ground.
And you mentioned the NCPCR pushing Odisha to track vulnerable kids, implement procedures, monitor runaways, keep rescued kids in school. These are all good preventative measures. But here's the fundamental problem, isn't it? If a family gets punished this severely for this long, just for following the law and protecting their own child, How on earth can they, or anyone else in that situation, trust the system that's supposed to be protecting them? The trust is just shattered.
Completely. It sends a chilling message, doesn't it? Stand up for the law, protect your daughter, and you might be the one who suffers.
I really want you, listening now, to try and step into Prasant's shoes for a second. Just imagine the sheer human cost of trying to do the right thing for your daughter, and the consequence. Being cut off from water, from firewood, from food at local shop, from praying in your temple, from earning a living. And think about the daughter, the trauma she already endured being kidnapped. Oh, layered on top of that is living with the stigma day in and day out of being from that family. The ones everyone shuns. This isn't being ignored. It feels like a slow, deliberate attempt to crush their spirit, to make their lives so unbearable they finally give in. It's just heartbreaking.
It is. And yet, amidst this specific tragedy, we should also acknowledge, as you said, Odisha has made real, tangible progress in preventing child marriages overall. The numbers show it. They went from preventing 324 in 2017 to over 1,734 in 2021. That's a big jump. And the state has set ambitious goals, too. They want to get girl child marriage down to 10% and boy child marriage down to 6% by 2024, which is now, and eventually, wipe out early marriage completely by 2030. So the intent at a state level seems to be there.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
There often is. Because these numbers, however encouraging, they only tell part of the story. The real battle, the much harder battle, is cultural. You see it playing out in districts like Balasore itself, where Prasant lives. It has a 26.4% child marriage rate. Or Nabarangpur, almost 40%, 39.4%. Niagara, over 35%. In these places, ingrained social norms, they frequently just override the law. And it's driven by this complex mix of factors. Poverty, lack of education, yes, but also deep-seated patriarchy. And that ever-present influence of caste. It's a really tangled web.
And thankfully, there are people fighting this on the ground, day in, day out. You mentioned Ala Kasahu earlier, the activist whose petition led to the Supreme Court action. She's been fighting child marriage for 35 years. Her NGO, Seva, has apparently stopped around 150 child marriages directly. That's incredible dedication. But even she points out implementation of the laws is patchy, inconsistent. And worryingly, she's observed a lack of awareness or maybe willingness to act among some local officials, like child development project officers, who apparently rarely file cases themselves. So, again, great laws, great goals, but the execution, it falters.
Exactly. So, looking at all this, the question becomes, what can actually be done? What are the concrete steps forward, drawing from what we've discussed?
Well, first, I think enforcement has to have teeth. It just has to. The Prohibition of Child Marriage Act can't just be words on paper. Local police, district officials, they need to be held accountable when they allow boycotts like this to fester for years. And remember, the SCST Act, that provides a clear legal tool for intervention in cases involving caste discrimination.
Right. Enforcement with accountability. What else?
Second, community-wide education. And not just pamphlets saying child marriage is illegal. Communities need sustained campaigns that help them truly understand the deep harm, physical, emotional, economic, that child marriage causes, especially to girls, but to the whole community, really. It needs to resonate locally. Third, and this is crucial, empowering girls themselves. Programs that keep girls in school are vital. Vocational training, teaching them their rights, give them options, give them a future.
Because an educated girl with a plan is harder to force into marriage.
Precisely. A girl with a diploma and a plan is far harder to bully into an early wedding. And finally, maybe something less obvious, amplifying the voices within the community who disagree. I find it hard to believe every single person in Balia Pati supports this boycott. There must be dissenting voices, people who know it's wrong. Those voices need support. They need to be made louder than the Pangaroo court's megaphone.
Find the allies within.
Exactly. Find and empower the allies within. Prasant Bar and his family, they really are champions, aren't they? Standing up against such immense pressure simply for doing what's right. Their resilience is just remarkable. And the fact that we're even having this conversation, that we're still grappling with widespread child marriage and these kinds of punitive community actions in 2025, it really does highlight a systemic failure, doesn't it? Something lurking beneath the surface of all the progress reports. Cases like prisons are just such a stark, painful reminder of how deeply rooted some of these harmful traditions still are.
It really is. And perhaps it leaves us, and you listening, with a final challenging thought. If a family can be ostracized, cut off from basic necessities for 3 whole years, just for protecting their child according to the law, what does that truly tell us about the meaning of community and justice in those spaces? And maybe more personally, what responsibility do we all carry to challenge outdated norms, to call out injustice when we see it not just in villages far away perhaps, but maybe in our own communities too. Standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult or unpopular.
Food for thought, definitely. And as for the villagers of Balia Pati who are enforcing this, maybe it's genuinely time to update the playbook. The world has moved on. It's probably time you did too. Stop boycotting families for protecting their kids. Maybe try boycotting bad ideas instead. Trust us, it's a much better look.